Hey, what's up, Strugglings? Today we're going to be taking a look at how to set up a series of distortion and overdrive pedals to get you that high gain sound that you're looking for. We're going to check this out using DONNER equipment. Let's get started. So as you can see from the insert here, I've got four different types of drive pedals set up on the desktop. Okay, the first is a classic fuzz pedal. Fuzz pedals have a really thick, really saturated, warm kind of clipping tone to them. The next in line is a blues driver, an overdrive pedal. Overdrive gives you the sensation of kind of pushing the front end of an amp a little bit hotter than you normally would, and that gives you that gritty kind of sound. Next in line, I have two different types of distortion pedals. The first is the Donner Dark Horizon, which is kind of a Marshall or a tube type overdrive, tube type distortion. And next is the Giant Metal, which is a clone of, I believe, a Metal Muff. I'm not 100% sure, but it definitely sounds like that to me, and I've seen it mentioned in a couple of other forums. So what we're going to do is we're going to run through each of these, and we're going to discuss pedal order a little bit. Now, pedal order is something that can be very controversial. You may agree with my order, you may not. We're actually going to flip a couple of these, and I'll show you why in a few minutes. But first up, we always want to have the fuzz pedal as early in the chain as possible. And that's because it wants as much of your guitar signal as possible. It doesn't like to have a lot of interference, so we try to put it as close to the beginning as possible. And we try to get higher and higher gains as we get towards the amplifier. Overdrive is the controversial piece here. Some guitarists like their overdrive after their distortion as it increases or it boosts their signal. Other guitar players, myself included, like to put it in front of a distortion because it can tighten up the signal a little bit. It can give you a little bit extra punch. So there are two different places we can put it. We're going to put it in both places. I'm not using a noise gate today, so you will hear quite a bit of buzz and hum. That's the nature of these things amplifying the gain and the signal. That's just how it's going to happen. Because I want you to get a sense of what the whole thing sounds like all together. Now, I wouldn't use distortion pedals in front of a high gain amp. The distortion pedal is actually a replacement for a high gain channel on an amplifier. So it's not the kind of thing you would do when you put in front of an amplifier, but you can use an overdrive pedal in front of a high gain amplifier to get the same effect. So if you have a tube amp or something that you really like the distortion sound on, I wouldn't really necessarily go in and get a distortion pedal, but I would get a good overdrive. This blues drive from Donner imitates the sound of an Ibanez Tube Screamer 9 or TS9, which is sort of a more modern version of the classic TS808. It's a little bit crisper, a little bit more sparkly in some tones. So we're going to play with this on both sides of this chain. After we do a couple of these rounds, I'm going to flip this all the way over to the end here. So we'll be reversing a couple of these. So you'll be able to hear first overdrive tightening up the distortion, and then you're going to hear overdrive overdriving the distortion. The fuzz pedal I'm not going to do anything else with. So a little bit about my signal chain really quick. I am using a Strat style guitar. Okay, so things will get a little bit different if you're going with a humbucker type of a setup like this one. This is my own. These are Fishman Fluence active pickups. So they're quite high output, and they're quite gritty when you need them to be, but they're also very, very clean on the clean zones. So you're really only going to get the sound of the guitar without a lot of interference. And similarly, for the amplifier, I'm using the Fortin Cali suite from Neural DSP on the clean channel. So everything is at noon on the amplifier. All of the tone you're going to hear is going to be coming down from these pedals. That's it. The reason I'm using the Fortin Cali is because it fairly closely mimics an American style, like a Mesa Boogie type cabinet and amplifier, and it gives a fairly good clean sound. So I'm going to quickly load up the recording software here, get everything plugged in. These are all set up and ready to go. and grab my headphones, and we'll get started with the clean tone. So here we are back. I am using this Strat style guitar again. Everything's plugged in. This is my clean tone, and it's pretty bright. It's got a really nice bright sound to it. Okay, pretty good. I like this tone. I like this tone. I like these pickups because it gives a really clean sound. I am using it in a hot Texas special type setting. This pops in, and this is sort of more of a vintage sound versus this. Okay, now I'm not using any compression, so things are going to spike a little bit. That's, again, just the nature of it. Let's start with the fuzz. So the fuzz is a pretty classic sound. Here, this knob is called the sustain knob. Then we've got, just let me double check here, make sure. Okay, we've got volume and tone. There's a little bit of reflection on the pedal, so that's really all there is. Okay, and this, you're going to hear the noise from it. You hear the change in the static. So with everything basically up to noon, I've got the volume turned down a little bit just because I don't want to overclip the recording software. This is what a fuzz tone sounds like. So a fuzz tone has a fuzzy sound, and you're not going to get a really good metal crunch out of it. This is what it sounds like if you try to palm mute. And I am on the bridge pickup down here. This should be a crunchy sound, but it's not. And that's not really what it's for. It is more of an accompanying instrument. And it gives you a nice kind of creamy sound if you go to your neck position in a upper register. Again, very classic, very vintage sound. I'm not going to mess around too much with the tones, but to give you an idea, if I turn the tone all the way up, it's kind of crispy sounding. Turn it all the way down, it's going to get muddy, right? Which actually I like as a sound, but more as a kind of a riff rock kind of sound. The Overdrive is your fundamental gain pedal. If you get any pedal for any style, get a good Overdrive. This is the Donner Blues Drive. It's a TS9 style. One of my favorite Overdrives, actually, because you can throw it into just about anything. Here the gain is all the way down, and we're in the warm position with the tone just slightly past noon, and you'll here's my clean sound again. We just put a little bit of edge on it with the Overdrive. So you hear it's got that kind of pushing the amp just a little bit too much tone, which is what you want from an Overdrive. That's what Overdrive means, right? We pull the gain up, that's going to be more dirt. Okay, very cool, really good rock sound. It's a little bit bright right now for my taste. Probably because I'm doing this on all single coils. We can turn the tone knob down, or we can control it with the tone on the guitar. Much better, right? Now we get into this kind of tube style distortion. The Dark Horizon has almost a Marshall lead channel sound to it. Let's listen. I've got the gain all the way up. This is one of my own settings. It's not specific to anything, but. So it's bordering on just being overdrive, and if we can mess around with these settings a little bit and kind of get kind of more of a scooped sound. Right. So it doesn't give you a ton of gain, but that's where blending it with this is going to come in. So with the overdrive. So let's bump over to the giant metal, which is one of my favorite distortions, really, that I own. You can hear that hiss kick in. This is a really high gain sound distortion. So it has a lot of punch to it, and a lot of sizzle. It's almost like a combination of fuzz and distortion, which, what the heck, let's try it. Here's a fuzz. Here's a fuzz tone. Awful. Don't do that. Okay, so we're not going to do that. But again, one of my favorite distortion pedals because it's got that kind of crunch to it. Listen to this Marshall style again. Right? Not a lot of bite compared to the metal muff style. Tons and tons and tons of harmonic response. But what if we took this distortion and added some overdrive to it? Okay, so it's got some little extra crunch, right? If we take the overdrive and add it to this guy, okay, there's lots of noise, lots of crackle happening, right? But, because I've got all three of them on, that's why. Okay, lots of noise, let's see. Here's just the giant metal. Now, here's the giant metal with the overdrive in front of it. Right? A little bit more bite, a little bit more impact to it. So I think this is a really good combination. This could be a really good combination if we take the overdrive, or if we take the dark horizon in front. But too much noise because we've got too much gain, right? Let's take this gain down and see. So it comes off being very cool because this almost acts like a different type of overdrive. So either one of these in front of this type of distortion, this type of really high gain distortion, would actually really impact the sound in a positive way, in my opinion. So we're going to flip this. I'm going to put the overdrive at the end of the chain and we'll see what happens with the distortions. Give me a minute. Okay, we're back. So as you can see, all I've done here is I've just swapped these two pedals. This guy we're going to leave out of the mix for right now. I love a good fuzz pedal. I don't use a ton of fuzz myself in my tones. It's just not something I use a lot because I can often get something similar with the controls on the guitar itself, at least in terms of what I would use it for. So I don't often use it. Sometimes blues gigs or classic rock gigs, I'll throw the fuzz on the board. But for the most part, it's there when I need it, but I don't use it that often. my concentration really is into this guy and this guy. That's where my that's where a lot of my metal tone is going to come from, a lot of my rock tones as well. So just a reminder, that's our clean tone. Our distorted tone from the Dark Horizon So what happens when you put pedals in order is whatever happens here is going to affect the signal going this way. So if you've had this pedal on, which we do right now, this is going to impact this tone. What we had before was this was impacting the overdrive tone. So now we're going to reverse that, and it's going to be affected by what happens at the drive. So now you hear that boost? Okay, the overdrive is going to overdrive the signal. I've got this now up in the hot position, which is a boosted position. So in the low gain setting here, we're not adding any gain, we're not adding a lot of color, we're adding a little bit of tone and some boost. Hey, we can turn this up and it will actually increase the volume right across the board. I don't want to do that because we're pretty maxed out on the recording, but what if we added more gain? So now the recorder is clipping again. I'm going to dial the gain back and increase the tone. Listen to the change in the tone. It's pretty aggressive, right? Let's take this back to where it was before and switch our pedals. Here's our here's our giant metal without the overdrive. Add the overdrive. Why would you do this? Maybe a lead, right? Maybe we're playing. And we need to kick on a lead. Something like that, but better, right? A little more gain in here, and let's see what we get. Like that. So flip these off. What we get is, again, everything that's downline in the chain. It always comes in this side and goes out that way, right? So everything that's downline in the chain is going to have an impact on what comes before it. So the same kind of thing, if we've got our Dark Horizon with max gain, flip on this guy, lots of noise. And sounds like chainsaws, right? Not great. Giant metal with an overdrive. Okay, a little bit more control. So what we're getting at here is to remember that whatever happens downline is going to affect what comes before it. My personal preference, and you can go back and play it again, I'll bookmark these, but my personal preference is to have the overdrive in front of my distortion or in front of my amp to really punch up the tone itself. What a lot of players do is they'll put this after so that they get a boost, especially if they're doing moving it into leads. I use a clean boost, or I'll often play with my guitar tone or my guitar volume set around 7, right? So that when it's time for my solo, I can pull it up a bit and then drop back down. So there are all kinds of different tricks that you can use for this. Some amps, like my PV, actually have a boost built in, so there's another 10 decibels in boosting power that happens with that. So that is sort of a quick introduction to how these gain pedals sound, how they work, and how they work together, and how you can use them in different ways in a rig. Like I said, if you're going to use the distortion channel on your amp, just get an overdrive. Okay, if you're going to look for different types and different flavors of distortions, get a couple of different distortion pedals and play with them, put them in your chain, and try the overdrive in front and behind. Do not put the overdrive into your effects loop, because it will make everything sound like an absolute natural disaster of the unnatural kind. Don't do it. But putting them and trying them in this order, just remember that the fuzz likes to have as much guitar tone going into it as possible. It doesn't want to be farther down the chain, and I would leave it right out front. Probably when we do a little bit more about pedal order, you're probably going to see a wah-wah pedal and a fuzz and an octave pedal kind of in this cluster on the front end, and we'll talk about that in a lot more detail. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this was useful for you. Let me know in the comments which you prefer, whether you like the overdrive at the end or the beginning of the gain stack. I'm just curious to know which you prefer. And I want to give a special shout out to Donner for helping me out by sponsoring me with these pedals for this demonstration. And if you want to see more of this kind of content coming out in the future, please by all means consider becoming a member of this channel. There are a few perks. We'll get into some details that we can't cover in the public videos. A little bit more stuff on setup, on woodworking, all kinds of things going on. So give that some thought, and in the meantime, remember to like and subscribe at least. That would be very helpful as well. And you can find links to all of these pedals below in the description. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week, or the rest of your weekend, or wherever you are watching this in your timeline. Have yourselves a great one.